my screen for you.
Thank you.
You are good.
All right, great. Thank you.
I'll hang around for a couple minutes just
All
to
right.
make sure.
All right, good morning, everyone. So our objective today is to work our way through line by line of the exclusive right to represent buyer agreement. And we affectionately just call it the buyer agreement, but it is the exclusive right. So it's going to be boring, but it is your business, so you need to know it. And I would implore you to pay as much attention as you can. Again, this is being recorded, so you can go back and review it. It is easier. I'm a paperless person myself, but I've watched the students as I've taught this class, and it actually is easier if you make your notes on here and then put them online later on if you want to. Because sometimes our electronics aren't as quick as our hand actually can be. But again, with that said, it's your own personality. But I would love to see you fill in everything on here, and then you will translate it into your dot loop once you are set up with David. Now, I'm not going to grade you on the dot loop per se, but we do want to make sure that you know how to use it when you leave this class. Not only do you know how to write a contract, write a buyer's agreement, write a listing agreement, get to the table, because what you're going to learn progressively through this class is you're going to learn to write a buyer's agreement. Then we're going to learn to write a listing agreement. Then we're going to build a contract around those two agreements using those personalities that we've written. All the accompanying documents, learning how to read the listing that's listed online. It's a fake one that's in our book, but you're going to learn how to do that. You're going to learn how to go in to a home and gather information you need in order to put that up online. Class time permitting, I will do a tutorial on Matrix and Keystone if I can. In the past, I've had Matrix and Keystone people from MRIS come in and teach, but because of the transition to the new program, Bright MLS, they're all tied up teaching elsewhere. So I will do some of that toward the end. We will do a mock settlement in the last few days of the class, if not the last day of the class. And that will be David Robertson of Universal Title will come over. We will assign roles to each of you. So some of you will be the Smythes, some of you will be the Jonases, who are our sellers, and you will go through a settlement together. And there will be some hiccups David and I come up with some hiccup to give to you. So you have to learn how to negotiate, how to refer back to the contract as to what the contract actually says and not on emotion. So one of the hardest things, especially if you're an I personality, and even a D at times, because the Ds just want the facts, right, is to get those emotions aside and look at the facts. Where a D wants the facts, but they just want it decided and done with. Okay? So that's the broad objective of what we're doing. And in the meanwhile, we will have guest speakers that'll be coming in. Yes, please do. And I'll give you mine to put up there as well for the class. Okay. So if we run into technical difficulties, that's my 911. Okay, my cell phone is 703-303-5476. So you guys are all welcome to copy that down. RUEF. Yeah, thank you. And you can certainly text me with questions, and then later on I'll write my email down as well. Okay, so I am not adverse to you contacting me with questions. Okay, I may not get back to you right away, but my policy is usually within 4 hours unless it comes in after 5 p.m. Okay, so that's kind of where we are. So as I was saying, we're going to have guest speakers that are going to come in throughout. Our first one will be next Thursday, which is the Donna Frio and Associates, and they are the home inspection company. So they're going to come in and spend a couple hours with you. We're going to talk about the home inspection contingency prior to that, and then they will come in and kind of explain what all entails in a home inspection. So you as an agent will understand what your role should be, how you share with your clients what their role is, whether you're a listing agent or a selling agent. And so the word selling agent is the buyer's agent, okay? So you may have come across this when you're doing your test. So I use the words interchangeably in all the legal documents. Well, I shouldn't say all, because a lot of them are now changing to buyer's agent, but most of them say selling agent. So it's someone who's selling the property, not listing the property. Okay. So listing agent is the only one you're going to hear for the one that represents the seller. And there's a little misunderstanding sometimes there. Okay. All right. So if I'm talking too fast, or can you guys all hear me well? Okay. So we have the mic there with Dennis if you guys have any questions. And we're going to go just right from the top and keep going down. Okay, so as I said, this is the exclusive right to represent a buyer agreement, and it's made on. So it's made on the day that you're meeting your clients. So for purposes of our study, it's today's date, the 19th of January, okay, 2018. And it's between the buyer. So who's our buyers? Right, so that's the name that you want to put in your buyer's agreement. Between their names, you can use a comma, the word and, or the ampersand. It does not matter. In the electronic formats, most of them put a comma between the two names. But there needs to be something to distinguish that it's one name different from the other. So space allowance, that's why the comma is used. Smallest character. Okay, so then a buyer's agreement is between the buyer and the broker. So most of you just come through getting your license, so you've learned that. Our beloved agents, as we progress in our career, sometimes we tend to forget that. But so the broker is responsible for this agreement. The agreement is between the broker. In our case, the broker is Steve Gaskins, and then Sheila is a signing broker. Okay, but Steve is the ultimate principal broker of this office and the client. So the agreement, the binding agreement, is between those two parties. Okay, so keep that in mind as we progress down through here. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and take the mic for Adrienne there. Okay.
Sorry. Okay, where it says insert firm name, so would you write Keller Williams Falls Church Steve Gaskins? Or
No, you would write
Steve...
Keller Williams Realty Falls Church.
Okay.
So that was my next thing. Thanks for asking. No. So brokerage. So the broker is not the name of the principal. It is the entity in this terminology. Great question. So legally, our name is not Keller Williams. Keller Williams is a company in Austin, Texas. Okay, Keller Williams Realty. When I and Debbie Martin set the company up, along with Steve Gaskins, when I went down to Richmond, they required that we distinguish our office separately from all other Keller Williams offices. You have to have a distinct name. Okay, so that's why it is Keller Williams Realty Falls Church. I know some agents believe that might diminish your working ability working outside the Falls Church area. I have not found that to be true myself. Where my office is and where I work can be totally different. But anyway, that is our legal entity. Now, in .loop, that automatic populates because Debbie Martin and David Donaldson have done a great job at filling in some of these fields for you. But as we work through this, I ask that they leave it blank so we can fill it in. Good morning. What was your name? Mohammed? We are on page 9 of your book. Okay, thank you. So the appointment of the broker. So in consideration of services and facilities, broker is hereby granted the right to represent the buyer in the acquisition of real property. Okay. Buyer's representations. Buyer represents that As of the commencement of the date of this agreement, buyer is not a party to a buyer representation agreement with any other brokerage firm. Buyer further represents that the buyer has disclosed to the broker information about any properties that the buyer has previously visited at any new homes communities or resale open houses, or that the buyer has been shown by any other real estate sales associate in any area where the buyer seeks to acquire property under this agreement. Now, for those who were here early, I was sharing a story. I think Dennis and Robert may be in the room. An agent called me last night who spent most of the day yesterday showing property to clients who particularly wanted land to build on. After taking them home after 5, they got on Zillow, found another property, called that agent up and went and saw it last night, all the while having an exclusive right to be represented by our agent. Now, our agent, knowing that agent, they did go over this with them. They read this portion to them. They made sure they understood this. Then in further conversation, our agent finds out that not only did they use another agent last night, they had been previously signed an agreement with a previous agent, which to their knowledge still exists, and has been shown property by that other agent since December. Okay, so it is imperative that you make sure they understand exclusive and what it pertains to. Agents are going to tell you, and I'll get the code for you so you can know. I mean, people are going to say, well, I haven't had to do that in the past. Well, July 1st, I think it's 2012, the law changed in Virginia that required the buyer's agreement to be in writing. It could no longer be an oral agreement. It could no longer be a flimsy, where the listing agreement had been like that for many years. The buyer's agreement had been kind of loosey-goosey, and the state allowed it up to the brokers to enforce it or not. But as of that July 1st, and I believe it was 2012, the state made it mandatory that this agreement be signed and that the buyer understands that they are exclusively using that one brokerage only. Okay, it's the one brokerage only. Now, you'll see when we get a couple pages how that comes into play between designated agency and stuff, but it is the same brokerage. So it still exists. It still happens out there. Now, my advice to that that agent last night was, they're dishonest. Drop them. Stop wasting your time. You spent 8 hours driving them around to 3 counties looking at land today. They're not an honest person. Don't look at them as a dollar sign. When you look at someone as a dollar sign or possible commission, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Okay. And not everyone is honest. So just as a note, and it was interesting that it happened last night as I started to teach this class again. So notices. Okay, so moving on to paragraph 3. All notifications and amendments under this agreement shall be in writing and shall be delivered using the contact information below. So again, remember that this is agreement between the buyer and the broker. Okay, so Dennis, it's not your email that goes under the email line. Okay, it's not Adrian's email information. It's not Susie's email information. It's the broker, and the broker's email is kwfallschurch@gmail.com. And I'll write it up on the board next time I stand up. You guys remind me, kwfallschurch@gmail.com. So let me scroll down a little bit here. All right. So backing up to buyer, the buyer's mailing address. Where do they currently live? Now, it's very conceivable that they live in Germany, right? Bill is stationed in Germany or had been stationed in Germany. So they might have a local address of a family member they want to give you to communicate with. It could be an APO address. It's more important that you have contact information. So an email, a home phone number if it exists, and a cell phone number if it exists. But some form of contact with that buyer is a must. It cannot be left totally blank. And same with the brokerage. So the brokerage, Our email address is 105 West Broad Street, Suite 200. You might have an office eventually on the 3rd floor. Your address is still Suite 200. That is our legal entity's address, okay? That's where all communications go to. That's where Jesus, the mailman, brings the mail to, is the 2nd floor, okay? Falls Church, Virginia, and then 22046. So 105 West Broad Street, Suite 200, Falls Church, Virginia, 22046. The office phone number is 703-533-1500. And the fax machine is 703-533-1513. Please do not leave the fax machine number off. We are in a very global area here, and you will at some point work with clients from other countries, whether they're moving here for work, moving here because they're immigrating here, coming back to the States from another country. Access to Wi-Fi and other communications is not as prevalent in other countries as it is here, and the fax machine is still used for documentation quite frequently, believe it or not. Sometimes that is the best way for them to communicate. It's perhaps less expensive. I have a friend that just moved to Germany, and they have pockets during the day that they get Wi-Fi, because it's very expensive, very expensive. And so fax machines can still be used, especially coming from other areas, small towns. I live in Culpeper. I live 53 miles from here. Do you know how hard it is to get a good, decent Wi-Fi? My parents, we moved in with them. They're aging out, but they have HughesNet because there's no cable of any kind. So it really depends on the weather sometimes. I've had to go, and since I have a legitimate business, we could get the business line, which gives us more bandwidth, because they were getting 50 a month and that was maxed out, pretty quickly when you're trying to work, and my daughter does online school. So just that far out in Northern Virginia, pretty much it's still Northern Virginia, so to speak, 53 miles away. And it's not that easy. And when I leave the driveway, a quarter mile down the driveway, there is no Wi-Fi for 5 or 6 more miles of any kind. So even in our own country, sometimes, in our areas, we are so spoiled right through here because everything's here for us. You walk into Starbucks, get your Wi-Fi for free, walk into Chick-fil-A. So just know that you're doing business with people that you may not have that luxury. And also remember for yourselves, sidebar guys, when you're showing homes, it's lovely when you get your card to download the app on your phone. It's great. It's nice to be able to go up to a lockbox and use your phone and not have to update your card and all that stuff. But woe to thee who goes to an area where the Wi-Fi is sketchy and you don't have your card updated. So just a warning, it does happen. In Centerville, Chantilly, pockets of Vienna, McLean, it's all there. So it's a good habit to keep your card updated with you. Still use your phone if you want to, but just some Deb tips there. Okay. So any questions about paragraphs 1 through 3, anyone? Okay. So paragraph 4, term and termination. This agreement commences when signed and subject to the compensation paragraph, which we'll get to later, and expires at 11:59 p.m. Okay. Some of you had just gone through school, and in our last class, someone mentioned that you were told that no more than 90 days for a buyer's agreement. There's no law that says that. So it's really an agreement between you and the client, whatever you want to do. So, if you know the client well and they're comfortable with a 6-month or even a year, they might say to you, hey, Susie, I'm starting to look at property to buy next fall. So a year agreement is not out of the ordinary, because what they want you to do is send them stuff, kind of get a feel for, they might be looking in 3 or 4 different areas. and they're going to be working with with their lenders to get their portfolio set up. Perhaps they're doing stuff around the house, the current house to sell. So it's not unheard of that a buyer is looking into the future to buy. Things happening in their lives. So perhaps expecting a raise or a bonus or something. Yes, ma'am. So if it expires, you can simply take this document, change the date, and the broker and the buyers initial that change. Okay. So or you can use an amendment, but it's simpler just to change it on here. So you would just add the new date, do a little crosshatch, and then have everyone initial. Good question. Okay, either party may terminate this agreement prior to the expiration date by delivering. So there you go. What does it hurt to have an agreement that's 6-9 months out if you can terminate it within X amount of days? So this is a paragraph that I never skip over I don't skip over any of these with my buyer, but particularly this stuff's on the first page. It gives them assurance that, hey, Dennis, we've just met through our mutual friend, Mohammed. You don't know me, but I'm sure Mohammed has told you, he trusts me. And I would love to show you. And you said your plan is to buy in May. So let's do this agreement for 6 months. But Dennis, I want you to be assured that if for any reason that we're not getting along or you just feel like it's not working between us, within a 3-day written notice. And the reason I choose 3 days, Dennis, is because a weekend comes in. And sometimes, as real estate agents, we're always looking at our emails and our text messages, etc. But other people not necessarily so all the time. So 3 days would cover a weekend if you're not working, if you're or out of town. So for our termination, let's put in, they changed that on me. Okay, let's back up. Okay, let me take the other notebook. I thought the change was later on. All right, sorry about that, everyone. All right, let's reread this one. Okay, the agreement commences when signed and subject to the paragraph terminates blank. Either party may terminate this agreement prior to the expiration date by notice to the other party. So there's no dates in there. They've taken that date away. In the event buyer wishes to terminate the agreement prior to the expiration date without good cause, buyer shall compensate the broker blank dollars, early termination fee, in addition to any compensation otherwise due pursuant to this agreement. Okay, so I guess they've taken that out. I don't know why. My guess would be because people didn't know what number to put in there and why. So you can just simply give each other notice. So I, as an agent, like the story I told last night, I told that agent, you need to fire your client. You need to send them a notice saying we're terminating our agreement and have the broker sign it because they're not treating you fairly. They're unethical. And it's just going to be once you get a ratified contract with them, you're just going to be you're going to have more and more grief all the time, second guess everything they do. It's not worth the energy in your life for that. So this paragraph is for either side. If Dennis doesn't like me for whatever reason, or I don't like Dennis, and Dennis might have, a cousin come along and say, hey, I just got my license. Is there any way you can get rid of your agent and use me? Sure, because he can terminate, okay? And yes, there was a change. I need to get my book updated. I sent all the changes to Rachel, but I didn't think the change was on the first page. That's why I was watching both. Yeah. So they took the dates out of this paragraph. Yeah. So I just reread this one here, which is the same as this one. So termination means 11 p.m. So as we move further into our contracts, 11:59 p.m. is the end of a day. So that is the date time. And then the other you will see is 9 p.m. in certain things. But 11:59 describes today's date. January 19th started at 12 a.m. and it runs to 11:59 p.m. All of it encompasses January 19th. Okay. So if I were to say we terminate on April 1st, then it's 11:59 p.m. on April 1st. Okay. That means that is a termination date of our agreement. So at midnight on April 2nd, Dennis could have his cousin there signing another agreement, because at 11:59 p.m. April 1st, our agreement ended. Okay. If he didn't want to fire me like mid-March or something, because he wasn't going to look at anything, to keep it clean or whatever. But that's what it means. So at the stroke at 11:59, the moment the clock strikes midnight, the agreement has ended. It's null and void. It holds no weight whatsoever. Okay. All right. So duties of the broker. Okay. Broker shall promote. I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. The money. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So this is your business. It's up to you. Some agents will put in there a flat fee. Some agents will put in there an expenses. Again, it's up to you how you want to run your business, and if you choose. Majority of the agents probably put the word zero there. But again, it's your business. It's up to you. The thing you need to be aware of and to be totally cognizant of is that you treat everyone the same. So in your business practice, you have to make certain decisions on how you're going to do your business. So if you're going to charge a termination fee for your buyer, it needs to be for all buyers. It needs to be the same. Or if you have buyers that are under a certain price point, say you have a buyer that looks at 500 or below, you might have a termination fee of $100. If you have buyers from 501 to $1 million, you might have a termination fee of, say, 200, just examples. But you need to write that down somewhere in a memo fashion for your business, so that if you're ever audited, because the office gets audited annually, and if your paperwork's not in order, you will be called in to explain. Again, it's a broker. Okay, remember, this is the agreement with the broker. So ultimately, Steve is responsible for what you write here. Okay. So there can be no perception of he's got green hair, so he can quit on me and I'm not going to charge anything. But she's got purple hair and I'm going to charge her $500. See? Okay. So keep it consistent. Again, it's your business. You need to make that determination. Okay. Personally, I don't charge for an early termination fee for a buyer. It's just dirty water, muddy water, it's just hurt feelings. It doesn't get anyone anywhere. If someone wants to terminate, then there's a reason. But again, it's your business. If you have someone who you think is using you as a taxi cab to show property, and you feel that you need to do that, by all means do that. But just keep it consistent. Just keep it consistent. Your goal here is to really build your business, create relationships, and get referrals. Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right. Broker duties. Broker shall promote the interest of a buyer, performing the duties of the brokerage agreement, seeking a property at a price and terms acceptable to the buyer, and I put a caveat, approved by the lender, because the buyer may want more than the lender will allow, presenting in a timely manner all written offers or counter offers to and from buyer, disclosing to buyer all material facts related to the property or concerning the transaction of which they have actual knowledge, accounting for in a timely manner all money and property received in which buyer has or may have interest, unless otherwise provided by law or buyer consents in writing to the release of the information. Broker shall maintain the confidentiality of all personal and financial information in all matters identified as confidential by buyer. If that information is received by buyer during the brokerage relationship, in satisfying these duties, broker shall exercise ordinary care, comply with all applicable laws and regulations, treat all prospective sellers honestly, and not knowingly give them false information. In addition, Broker may, excuse me, in addition, broker may show the same property to other buyers, represent other buyers on the same or different properties, represent sellers relative to other properties, or provide assistance to a seller or prospective seller by performing ministerial acts that are not consistent with the buyer's duties under this agreement. Okay, let me scroll down here for those. All right. Acknowledges the seller or seller's representatives may not treat the existing terms or conditions of offers as confidential unless confidentiality is required by a written confidentiality agreement between the parties. So, in essence, you have duties to perform that you're licensed to do, showing property, writing contracts. This is clarifying to your buyer that though you have an exclusive agreement with that buyer, the broker who you are designated representing under the broker with this buyer, that you can also perform duties for somebody else simultaneously. Okay. This is not talking about dual agency. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But meaning that you can have other clients. So Dennis is representing Muhammad. And Robert comes along and met Dennis and wants Dennis to represent him, perhaps at the same open house. You're doing an open house. Muhammad comes in. He may want to make an offer on that open house. He's not represented. You represent him. Later on, Robert comes along and wants you to represent him. You can represent both of them. You can represent both of them making a contract on the same house. Okay? Because you're asking them. You're not saying to Robert, Robert, I think you should offer this amount of money. Now, you could give him advice based on the comps, but it's really Robert who's going to drive to you and say, well, I want to offer this amount. Same with Muhammad. They can tell you where you cannot share with each other that you've got a client who's making an offer for $500,000, $5,000 over list. Robert, do you want to make it for 501? You can't do that. Right? Do you understand? This agreement is allowing you to represent more than one person. Now, some agents, what they'll do when they get in that situation is Dennis might say to Susie, Susie, I've got two clients who want the same property. Do you mind representing Robert just during the contract phase? And I will give you X amount of dollars to do that, which means Susie's going to write the contract on behalf of Dennis for Robert, listen to all Robert's financial information so Dennis doesn't have to be privy to it. That way Dennis doesn't slip up anywhere along the way. You get what I'm saying? That's one way you can do it. It's your own conscience and how you know. If you're someone who might talk too much, then you want to be cautious. Okay. You can certainly share with both Muhammad and Robert that you've got clients, because your contract allows that you also have another client looking at the same property. And Dennis could say to Muhammad and Robert, I've got another client. You don't give them their name or anything about them looking at this same property, potentially to write a contract. Even though our agreement allows us for that, do you feel comfortable me doing that? And if say no, that I would hire another agent to work for me just for the contract written portion. And then if Robert were to prevail and Susie wrote the deal for Robert, then once the contract is ratified, Dennis then takes back over. Susie is just there as the bad word, but a front person. She's there to protect Robert's integrity, Dennis's integrity, and to protect Robert's privacy, so that Dennis can fully give his attention to Muhammad, but Robert's really Dennis's client. So then Dennis pays Susie a fee that you agree upon in writing. Is it a percentage? Is it a flat fee? Again, you agree upon that in writing. Okay. If I was going to hire someone to do that for me, depending on the price point of the house, I would say, would you do it for $500 or would you do it for, whatever. And again, once Susie and Dennis agree upon that, then that's what it is, whether Robert prevails or not. Because Dennis doesn't know that Robert's going to prevail. Dennis may never make a dime off of a commission from Robert, right? But that's an option. It's not something you have to do. Again, it's an option. Some agents do that, and some just do it themselves. But that paragraph gives Dennis the right to represent more than one person, as it gives the whole brokerage the right to show same property to other people. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Buyer's duties. Buyers shall work exclusively means solely with the broker during the term of the agreement, pay the broker directly or indirectly the compensation set forth below, comply with reasonable request of the broker to supply any pertinent financial or personal data needed to fulfill the terms of this agreement, and be available during broker's regular working hours to view properties. Buyer is advised against and assumes responsibility for taking, posting, publishing, or displaying any photo or video recording of any property without first obtaining seller's prior written consent. Buyer hereby releases and holds harmless brokers, designated agents, sales associates, employees, and other liability which may result from, sorry guys, that may result from, where am I at? Huh? Oh, there. Result therefrom. Buyer also acknowledges that seller may have a video and or recording system in the property even if prior disclosure is not made. Okay. Rachel, do you have a question? Rachel, do you have a question for us? Okay. So succinctly, what this is saying is when you are showing a house to your buyers, they cannot walk around the house videoing. Okay, it's illegal for them to do that because that house belongs to somebody else. And they can't video what's inside the house with their phone or anything else without the written permission from the seller. Now, if your client, let's say the wife is here on a fact-finding house tour and the husband is in California. Now, there's 30 pictures online right now. Bright MLS is going to take that up to 90. Okay? Isn't that awesome? Can you imagine 90 pictures? At the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, now we have to take 90 pictures. But then you've got your video and your virtual tours. How much more video coverage does someone need? But then again, you might be in a home where there's very little pictures because it might not be picture worthy. Okay? That still does not mean your client has the right to video or take pictures without the written consent of the seller. So I've been in that situation. I've walked into a house. There's virtually no photos of it, and someone there needed to share with somebody else. We just stopped what we were doing. We called the listing agent. We asked the listing agent to send us an email that they received from their seller, where the seller said, yes, it's okay if they video, but not to upload it online, to share privately, okay, with a spouse. Okay, so can you see the liability? You walk into a house and it's a trash heap, and you take pictures and you splash it all over Facebook, you know, the liability that's there. So this paragraph is telling the buyer that, look, if you do something like that, the broker is held harmless from this. But you as an agent need to make your buyer understand that they cannot do that. On the other side, sellers are supposed to now, in this last year, there's a disclosure in the listing agreement and online now that says we have recording equipment going on in the house. So you are being recorded the whole time you're throughout the house. Okay. They are supposed to disclose that. So as a buyer's agent walking through the house with your buyers, you don't talk about finance. You don't talk about, you know, we're going to ask less because the stove is old. You just don't have those conversations inside the home or in the yard of the home because there can be outdoor equipment. you leave that property or sit in your car and have those discussions, because surveillance is out there now, and especially in our area. There was a case a couple of years ago, I think it was in Great Falls, but nice home, detached garage with an upstairs suite. So the sellers are sitting there watching the whole time. Yes. So that's why, because of that case and others like it, is why we've had to disclose that. Now there's nanny cams, there's animals, in the bedrooms that have cameras in them. So it's all on the ethical side of the seller to tell their agent that they're recording or not. So just err on the side of caution and assume you're being recorded, and make sure your client understands that. Okay? And that goes for adjusting yourself when you're in the house. Yes. So Adrian?
Hey, what about like FaceTime? Is that considered recording, even though?
Yes.
Because you're broadcasting it somewhere else,
Yes.
even though it's not being like saved or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
So anything electronically, you cannot capture that without the written permission. So if it is important, so if you know ahead of time that you've got a client who needs to share what they see with someone else, then just get written permission and keep it in that file. That's the great thing about .loop, is you can have that miscellaneous file. So you upload that permission right there. It stays forever. You can archive it, but it still stays there forever. So if the auditors called up Debbie Martin one day and said, we need to look at Adrian's file for such and such property, because there's been a complaint, or Debbie has to pull everything together because someone's complained, we can say, yes, we have permission, to do that. Now, if your client then uploaded it online, then that's where the broker is exempt and held harmless. The buyer would then be the one who they could go after for any damages. Okay? All right, so the purpose. Paragraph 7. The purpose: buyer is retaining broker to acquire the following type of property. Okay. Sometimes it's just simple residential property. Okay. You might have someone who says, I want a condo in Arlington only. Don't show me anything else but a condo in Arlington. Okay. Then write condo in Arlington. Because right now you might have one buyer, but a year or two from now you might have 6 buyers at the same time. You might have a transaction coordinator who's working for you, who might be pulling stuff together for you, and who might be online setting up your searches. So you never want that transaction coordinator to send your client townhouses in Arlington when they specified condos. Okay, so if your client is specific, then put that specificity down. If they say, I want a townhouse in Fairfax, it must be an in-unit, and it must be 3,000 plus square feet, then that's pertinent to what they want. Okay, it is residential property, but there is some specific requirements that they want. Not only is that, and they can change their mind at any time, of course, but it's also, you've heard them, you've taken seriously what they want, you've written it down, but it's a reminder for you when you go to set up the search, right? As we age, sometimes our memory goes, or we've talked to 3 people that day. I mean, it's very conceivable that you could meet with 3 buyers in the same day. All 3 have similar requests, just slightly different. So it's best to write it down. It used to be a joke with us in the early days with the Gaskins team, and Steve and I we'd get one client named Mary. Within a week, we'd have 2 or 3. Or the last names would be so similar. It's like, okay, who are we talking about today? And it does happen. It always makes me giggle when it does. So compensation. Okay. The retainer fee. Broker acknowledges receipt of the retainer fee in the amount of which shall or shall not be subtracted from any compensation due to the broker under this agreement. The retainer fee is non-refundable and is earned when paid. Again, just like the early termination fee, this is your business decision. Okay? If you are new in the business or have some financial constraints when it comes to having cash flow for like 5 tanks of gas because your client's looking a lot of places or something, and again, Eric and others are going to train you how to help minimize that excessive driving, really learning the areas and pinpointing what your client's true needs are and not just looking at everything on the market. Okay. But again, this is a business decision. This is something I believe that you write down in your business book. You should have a notebook, an online file, something that talks about what your business practices are. So if you're going to charge a retainer fee, it needs to be across the board. It needs to be for everybody. Okay. You cannot just say, I'm going to charge Dennis that retainer fee because I think he looks shady. Dennis may look shady. He could be like one of my uncles who you thought he was a pauper, but is far from it. You want to buy him his last meal, but he just doesn't want to spend his money. But, you've got to be very careful about that. This is all goes to fair housing and everything else out there. So again, it's your decision, and the amount of money that you put there is your decision. Now, where I see retainer fees used more than in the buyer's agreement is really in the the rentals. So when we get to the rental paperwork, we'll talk more about that. Okay. So payment. Buyers shall pay compensation in the amount of. Okay, I'm going to move over to the board here. And let's see. So compensation. How much does agents earn? Normally 3%, right? Customarily 3%, right? Okay. So when a listing agent takes a listing agreement, and we'll find that out when we go through listings, but just a little history. The listing agent represents the seller, and the listing agent negotiates with the seller how much commission the seller is going to pay the listing agent. Okay? So customarily, traditionally, for the last 50-some, 60-some odd years, it's been 6%. Okay? Then the listing broker shares their commission with the listing broker, and the selling broker share the 6% commission customarily. Okay. Now, the listing broker can, when they do their listing agreement with the seller, it's detailed out in there what that is. Is that me popping? Okay. You're electrified. Okay, so if the listing broker received a 5% listing, they may choose to keep 2% for themselves and offer 3% to the selling agent. They might do it like this. Okay? They may even do it like this. Huh? Well, you are duly bound to show your client everything. But yes, that's what Dennis just said. That becomes the sticky wicket there. It's like years ago, agents could certainly preclude their client from seeing the houses that offered less commission. But because everything's out there on the internet, you do yourself a disservice by not allowing your client to have knowledge of those homes. But this is so you as an agent don't even know this has happened until the day of settlement when you're at the settlement table. Because you have no idea what their commission is until the day of settlement. This is, but this side is not. Okay. So when you see something like this, you can surmise that it's a 4% listing and you're sharing it 2 and 2. Now I went to the settlement table once and it was like this. Boy, was I mad. Then the agent told me that the guy was cash poor and she had to pour all her own money into the fix up and all the stuff. I said, I can understand that a little bit, but you're still coming out with more than 3%. You've not, I said, you really unethically cheated us, but it was what it was. My client wanted the property. but so it happens. So sometimes at the settlement table, we can get our noses out of joint, but we're serving our clients, and that's the main thing. So with that said, that's the little story behind. Let me see if I can get this, our lovely thing falling here. So now it's coming to what you write here, okay? Oh, no wonder it's coming out here. There we go. Okay, so now under paragraph 8, okay, so we're looking at subparagraph B. Okay, so currently, we are currently part of the MRIS system, which stands for Metropolitan Regional Informational System. We are converting to Bright MLS. So I would just use the word MLS instead of MRIS. MLS is multiple listing system. MLS is facial tissue. MRIS is Kleenex, right? Kleenex is a brand name. MRIS is a brand name. MLS is the broad stroke of what we're using. So some agents will write, one of the best thing to do is just write, they'll simply say per MLS. So whatever the MLS is offering, that's what I'm accepting, okay? So the MLS is offering 2%, I'm going to accept 2%. If the MLS is offering 4%, I'm going to accept 4%. Okay? Now, some land purchases, it's more than 3%. Sometimes it can be 5 or 6% when it's land that they're offering the buyer's agent. So then some people say, well, I always want 3% because that's what I deserve. Okay? Okay? So you write in here MLS or 3%. And that's perfectly acceptable, okay? But you as an agent had better explain this to your buyer now and not when they get the settlement table. Because if you had a listing that offered you 2.5%, and you might say whichever is greater or whatever, that means your buyer owes the additional 0.5%. And their lender better know that they're going to have to cough up the extra 0.5% because it has to be part of their financial package. Okay? So saying 3%, in my opinion, and in this day and age, gets you in hot water. It would be great if you could get 3%, but even some of our biggest listing agents have listed things that offer less than 3% now because it's just the way the market has gone. Sometimes it's hard not to. As people are recovering from those who bought back before the crash, some of those homes have just now started squaring up even. So for those sellers to pay 6% may leave them without anything or put them below the watermark. So sometimes it has to be a 5% listing. Okay, so if you choose to use 3%, I caution you that you need to make sure your buyer knows it. And I even go so far as to say the buyer needs to initial it. You need to make sure they have initialed that area to know that you have had that conversation with them. Because there's been situations where they've gotten to the table and, or just days before that, they're told by the title company, oh, we just got word from the agent that your client owes 5%, 0.5% for their commission. Do you think you'll ever get a referral from that person? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So you've got your per MLS, okay? But then we have new construction and we have FSBOs. FSBOs stands for sale by owner, okay? So it looks like you have a lot of space up there, and you kind of do, but it doesn't always fit in some of the things. So if you can fit it, write this, but per MLS, and then, let's get Pause that thought, I'm sorry. The other option you have, Keller Williams does not require that you charge a flat commission fee. Years ago, it may have been called an administrative fee, something along that line. You cannot use the word administrative. It is a flat commission. Other brokerages out there, brokerages houses that have yellow signs and red and other red signs, they mandate that their agents charge those fees. If the agent does not charge the client the fee, the agent themselves pays it 100%. Okay. When we created this franchise, the owners and the ALC board and Steve, we all decided that it would be a decision to the individual agent whether you chose to charge a flat commission or not. Okay. How much of an amount you choose to charge is up to you. I know that there are agents in the office that charge, I've seen them from $295 all the way up to $695. And it is their decision. And again, like the other fees, you need to make sure you're very clear as to how you're charging the fee. If you're going to graduate it based on price point, then you need to detail that out in writing. If, for example, you're a teacher, let's say, Adrian, you're a teacher. You work for Arlington County School Systems. You're transitioning out of being a teacher. You become a real estate agent. You have a lot of teachers that potentially could be your clients. You feel for them. You've been encouraged to charge the flat commission. What it does, like all of us, it does help defray some of our costs. It helps recoup some of those lost commissions when it's the 2 and 2.5%. It's still commission. It's still shared with the office. But you've said to yourself, but I don't want to charge teachers. Okay, so you make a memo that I'm going to charge $395 flat commission. However, I will not charge teachers the $395 flat commission. Or Robert, you could be a vet and you decide that you're not going to charge vets. And you detail that out, that you're not going to charge a particular person, a particular personage, the flat commission. So you're covered. If we were being audited and they're looking at your stuff and they say, well, these people were all charged, but this person wasn't. So say someone finds out from a friend that they weren't charged flat commission. And they didn't realize it's because that other person was a teacher that you didn't do it. Let's say one was of one nationality and one was the other. Okay? And that person gets hurt or feels offended because you charged them the flat commission, not knowing that you didn't charge teachers. And they didn't ask you, but they brought a suit against you later just because they were hurt. And it does happen. They will call the board and they will, those complaints. That's what the board's for. Now the board would simply call Steve, ask Steve for an explanation. You could provide in writing that you've made a memo to your father, you don't charge teachers. You could show him, you could show him other buyer's agreements where if they were a teacher, they weren't charged. If they weren't a teacher, they were charged. And that would suffice the board, okay? But it does happen. Again, it's a business decision. I implore you to make a note of your decision, how much it's going to be, and then choose a date in the year, January 1st, July 1st, whatever it is. If you're going to increase your fees, just make it a point in time. Don't willy-nilly say, oh, they're buying $1 million property, I'm going to charge them $795. Okay. Any questions? No, go ahead.
Personally, how do you feel about that?
I personally, and my business partner Daphne, we do not charge the flat commission.
And is that like, because I'm from Florida, and in Florida in the MLS, you'll see like 3% minus $295. Does that come up? I don't have
no, not here
yet.
So no, in Virginia, the MLS does not say minus the flat commission. The flat commission is between the buyer and the broker, or the seller and the broker. It doesn't show up on the MLS anywhere at all. Okay. Right. They could be doing very, very well. Could be doing that. How every MLS is different. Every state is different how they do stuff. So if you are going to do a commission, And let's say you do a $395. Okay, you can't just say $395. You have to say the words flat commission or just simply commission, but it's best to have the word flat so they understand that that's it. It is the percentage of what's offered at MLS, which is offered by the seller, that they, the buyer, are not paying. But they, the buyer, are paying this fee. And you need to make sure your buyer understands that they are paying this fee. Okay? Don't gloss over it. That's the worst thing you can do is gloss over that with your clients. Okay? All right. I need to bring some duct tape, I think. Okay, so now, the other things to consider are FSBOs, as I was starting to say, and new construction. So you've had your meeting with your clients, and they've seen a few new constructions. They've just kind of driven through. They haven't really met with anyone. Now, new construction people take it very bad when an agent inserts himself after they've already started negotiations. So when you first meet with a buyer, and let's say they've gone out to South Riding and they've kind of driven through and looked in their open houses, but they've never formally put their name down. Then as a buyer's agent, you should be able to then go with them, look at the new homes, models and stuff, introduce yourself as their agent, and then get commission. But in most new construction, once they've already put their name forth without an agent in tow, you may not get a commission. But the other side of that is if they walk in and like on a Sunday and say, Robert represents, one of the newest South Riding things that are popped up, and I'm driving up the road and I see that there's an open house today from 2 to 4. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to stop in. But you, Adrian, my agent has told me, if you go to an open house of any kind, including new construction, please make sure you have my card with you. Here is a Ziploc bag. Here's my cards. So I go in. I'm like, hi, Robert. I just saw your sign out there. I wasn't expecting to be here, and I didn't have a chance to call my agent. But Adrian's my agent. Could I see anything without Adrian today, or would you prefer that she be here? Because I do want her to get the commission. Yeah. So Robert has to say, well, our policy is if we show you and your agent's not here, she's not going to get commission. They could be. Everyone's different. See, there's individual new constructions, there's big companies, and they're all very different. And the pot of money often that they give to commission is not the same pot of money that they necessarily give reduction to. And that's the mindset of buyers, that they think, well, if I don't go with the agent, I can save money over here. That's not necessarily the case, because one is tax deductible and one is not. That's all I'm going to say on that. But anyway, because I'm not an accountant. But so here you want to say, put in negotiated new construction and FSBO for sale by owner. So negotiated, so you as the agent are going to negotiate for them with new construction. You as an agent are going to negotiate with them for a sell by owner. So same thing. Agent's driving down the street. She sees this for sell by owner sign. Now what you should do is snap a picture, because I've, as your agent has told you, snap a picture, send me that so I can call that FSBO person. And I would say to them, Robert, I see you have your house listed for sell by owner. I am a real estate agent. I work for Keller Williams. I have a client that just drove down your street, very interested in seeing your property, but I do represent them and have an agreement with them for commission. They would like to see your home. Robert, are you willing to pay me a commission for showing your property and selling your home? Please understand, Robert, that as their agent, I will write the contract. I know you're not represented. We will have a document stating such. There's a document that states that if we do come to an agreement, then you are going to pay my brokerage a percentage that we agree upon. Robert, does that sound good to you for me to, can we get that settled so we can show your property? And Robert could say, well, I'll pay you 1%, 2%, or 3%. Robert might say, I'll pay you 1%. I'll say, what about 1.5%? type thing. Or I'll say, I'd like to get 2%, Robert, and he'll say 1.5%, or back and forwards, or yes, I'll do the 3%, or I'll do the, whatever. But Robert and I have discussed it. We then have memorialized it in an agreement for FSBO that he is going to pay commission. He's signed it. It's a legal document. Okay. Then I show Adrian the house. I subsequently write a contract. Robert doesn't hire anybody else. He's looked over the contract. He feels very comfortable that he knows what he's doing. And so I don't have to worry about Robert understanding what I've written. He's given the contract. If he wants to show it to his brother, who's the attorney, that's fine. But his brother doesn't represent him. Okay. He has a due diligence. And if he signs it, it's a binding contract. And then we move forward. At the settlement table, they will take out of his money, they will pay the commission before he gets paid. Okay. His mortgage, if any, gets paid off. All his bills that are required, if he has lien holders, gets paid off. The commission gets paid off. And then what's left goes to him. Okay. So that's for sale by owner. Now, a lot of agents, and you'll get trained, but throughout time, will go after for sale by owners to try to get them to help list their property. And majority of people really don't know what it is out there in real estate, and they can probably get more money if they did have an agent representing them, because who really knows that market in that area. But again, you're going to find some who maybe bought and sold for years and they just don't want to deal with an agent, and that's okay. They're out there. But clearly I've made it clear to Robert I actually have someone that we want to come by and see in the next couple of days, but before I show you that property. And I'll say to Adrian as my client, now, Adrian, if Robert doesn't give me a commission, I need to be paid, and your lender, can you talk to your lender and say, can you pay me 1% of the deal or a flat fee? You're my client. I want to see you get into a home and it's the best one you've found. So I'm not looking at you as a dollar sign, but at the same time, I need to be paid, right? Because I have bills to pay. I have mouths to feed. It is my business, and I cannot do it for free for everybody. But I might be willing to do it for a flat fee, or even to Robert, if not percentages, a flat fee or whatever. But we agree upon that. And then, and I'm going to say to you, Adrian, now your job is to refer people to me to make up for the deficit, right? In a way. But anyways, any questions about this? Okay. So that's the hardest conversation you're going to have in both your buyer's agreements and your listing agreements. Now, the buyer's agreement's not so much unless you're going to do the flat commission, but you need your client to understand what the commission says, because it actually says that they owe you the commission, or it's deferred, right? By somebody else. I just read it, but anyway, basically, if it's set up that if the commission's owed to you, but someone else could pay it, right? Didn't I read that, or is that DC? I'm sorry, I do DC and Maryland too. In most cases, seller pays a broker's fee, but in the event seller does not pay the amount due, buyer agrees to pay, right? So, all right, with that said, let's take a break till 10:20, okay? And then we'll regroup. I'm going to turn the mic off for those who are online. We're going to take a break till 10:20.
Thanks.
Okay, everyone, we're back on, so we'll get started. Dennis just had a question, which I thought was a great question, so we'll derail for a moment. What do you need as a new agent to function? And price point wise, like I said, you could spend $6,000 to $8,000 in your first year. $5,000 to $6,000 is conservative between getting all your licensing done. Just in gas alone, if you get clients to show around, but then yourself, you're going to be doing open houses, you're going to look at things, you're going to come to the office. So though you're tracking that for your taxes, it is expense, it is gas, okay? Oftentimes, might be a bump in your wardrobe, could be keeping your car clean. So those are things that we don't think about, but are actualities. Either you're going to do it yourself or have it cleaned, but the minimum is you need to get your central lock card. So once you get your license, you join the board. It's a requirement in the state of Virginia and the brokerage that you join MVAR. You have to. You can't act as an agent if you don't. Then you join MLS. Now, MLS is not a requirement, but you can't do business without it, okay? So there's all the startup fees for those entities. We're we're 4 months into the new fiscal year with MVAR. So you're looking, if those of you who may not have your license coming in yet and haven't joined, but you're looking at a $600-700 ticket there. Okay. Then another, yeah, right. So then you're looking at joining MLS. So that's close to $400 and some dollars, right? Because there's the initial fee and then all that. Right. The initial fee. Then you've got to get your central lock card. So you get that through NVAR. So there's an additional fee for that, about $100 and some dollars. And then, yeah, your lockbox. Okay. Right. It's a lease, right? And every year you pay. Like all of our fees are due by January 22nd. So I don't know when any of you got your cards, but you may have a renewal fee due January 22nd. Then you've got your office fee, $85 a month. Okay. People forget about this stuff. They put it on a credit card and they forget. So, okay, so you're looking, what, 85, 10 is 850, 85 twice 170. So So you got your office fee, and then there's an annual fee that you pay in January, which is an additional 25, I believe. 25, yeah. So those of us who are getting bills, I think our January bill was 110 instead of 85, because we pay to Keller Williams International, our yearly fee to the Keller Williams International. So you have your dues to pay. Then now you want to market. So you're going to send a mailing out to your neighborhood. So you're going to have to either hire someone to create it, or you create it yourself, have it printed at Vistaprint or Quantum or whatever. And then you're going to have to mail it, or you're going to walk it around. So if you're going to mail it, you're looking at postage. Okay. So those are things that people don't think about, but it's costly, but you're doing them in chunks at a time. But over the span of the year, those are things. Now, when it comes to getting your signs, I would talk to the staff, and periodically they might make a bulk order sometimes, and pay attention to the emails. Sometimes Oakley will put out and we work a lot with Oakley, and Oakley does have it set up that oftentimes if multiple agents order, they'll still customize it for you. Maybe each agent has to order 5 signs a piece, but that still could be $80 a sign. That's a chunk of change, right? The office has some listing signs that are generic, that wouldn't have your name on it, but you can certainly use it if you had to, if you got a last minute listing, because the signs themselves take a couple weeks from the time you order it to get them back. Now there's other companies, Fast Signs and other those, you can do research on those. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Then you have But then you've got, like I said, you can get sign writers. You're going to do open houses, so you're going to need some directionals in the neighborhood. There again, those aren't cheap. They could be, if you're only going to buy a dozen or so, you're looking, $15, $20 a piece, and they get stolen all the time. So these are things that, as Dennis asked, that you have to start thinking about. What does your budget allow? And if you're doing business now, I would not go buy a lockbox right now if you don't have a listing, because you can go to MVAR and buy a lockbox Monday through Friday. Just walk in there and buy a lockbox. Worst case, you could always borrow another agent's lockbox till you bought one if you had to do something last minute on a weekend. Most of us can do that, share a lockbox with you. But that's $85 to $100 for a lockbox. Put a sign in the yard, minimum of $65 for them to put the signpost up for you. Or you can buy your own for $85. So, some people will use the service and some people will just buy their own, depending on their storage at home and what they have. So those are just some of the expenses that you could incur besides driving someone around, taking a client out for lunch, things that we don't, and we just do every day in little chunks. But at the end of the year, what did it add up to, and what were you expecting, and how does that fit into your family and your finances and your budget? So was anyone here in October when they did so every October we do a planning day and they go over the budget, and it's done throughout the year a couple times. But Sheila and Eric and Shane and them can, show you. There's an online economic budget things you can, set down parameters for yourself and look at. It's a good thing to do, especially if you yourself are accountable to someone else for how much you're spending. And then the other side of the coin is you need to start keeping track of your expenses. I'm not an accountant, but our taxes were built for entrepreneurs, and so you do get tax advantages as being an independent business person and being an independent owner. So you need to if you don't have an accountant, you might want to do that, but whether you choose to use a TurboTax or some other online thing, it does ask a lot of questions, but make sure you get the one for business. We had an accountant that used to be in our office that shared with us and talked a lot about earnings. And one of the things she shared with me, which I did not know, was that when you're starting up a business, if your first 6 months is toward the end of the year, you can roll it into, so like, let's say if you guys did your schooling and a lot of your payments in 2017, you didn't really earn any money in 2017. You may not choose to take your deductions in 2017, but hold them to 2018 when you're going to make more money, because you can do it 18 months. So you can go back 6 months and capture any expenses. So that would be your class expenses, the driving to class, all that. If you kept track of it, you can do that. But again, double check with an accountant on that and take advantage of that, because you all came in at the end of 2017, right? So you might have some of those expenses crossing over there. But again, I'm not an accountant. Yes, Robert? Right. Yeah, there's several different ones out there. They're all great. It's good to do that. My husband would write everything down, and he was very diligent about it for his business. But he used to drive me crazy. It's like, just start the car, just start the car. But then I'm the one's like, okay, yeah, what law was that? But I use the app. So, and again, now one of the things that you do not have to pay is you do not pay county business taxes. Okay, that's what's paid through the office. Our office is in the City of Falls Church. So for every commission check you get, you are going to be charged 0.0052% of the total amount that's yours, and that gets paid to the City of Falls Church. So you might live in Fairfax, but you don't have to go to Fairfax and get a business license. Okay. Because your real estate license and connected to the office pays the taxes where the office is located. Okay. We had an agent years ago who was going from area to area every time thought he had to go pay taxes to Arlington and Fairfax, and you don't. If you choose to do an LLC, then you have your expenses through that. Whether you choose to do it on your own or use something like LegalZoom. Again, those are things that you need to talk to an accountant about, how it best suits you and how you want to do your business. Same with your car. You're going to take gas mileage, you're going to take depreciation. Again, that's a question for your accountant. But in the meanwhile, I would certainly save all your receipts. Do something simple as getting 12 envelopes, January, February, March, through December, and just start putting the receipts in there. Keep them in your car. As you get your receipt, just shove it in there. Keep a habit of doing that. Otherwise, they mount up. Yes. Yes. So in Virginia, we are independent contractors affiliated with Keller Williams Brokerage. So the money, all the commission comes to Keller Williams, and then every agent has an agreement. Now, Keller Williams is not like other brokerages. If you all come in new, it's a 70-30 split. And as your business increases and you're starting doing $6 and $7 million consistently a year, then you can change your split to be an 80-20 or a 90-10. But again, that's the discussion with the team leader. It just means that your commission is, over the span of that year, and everyone has a different year. We all have different years. My fiscal year with the office is July. So in July, my cap resets in July. In other brokerages, you might be brought in at 46 or 50%, and then only graduated up as you earn. Okay. And everyone's different. It's negotiated. But Keller Williams it's just standard across the board. Oh, yes. As long as you're in compliance with the state regulations, right. So in the past, a Deborah could be called Debbie and Deb, and no one really cared, okay? But because of people using different names, a lot of times people might come here or might have a very complicated name, but might go by a name simpler to use. Now we have to declare if we're going to be calling ourselves something different. So I had to declare, I don't know if I declared Deb or Debbie. I think it's Deb. But I had to declare as a DBA that I also might do business as Deb. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it might be Debbie. I think it must be Debbie because that's what it says, Debbie and Daphne. But I had to declare that I do not do business as Deborah. Okay. Then you have, your renewal fees. Now, as new agents, you do not renew. You have to take your post-licensing education within 365 days of your initial license. So if your license came through on January 2nd, then next year by January 1st at midnight, you had better have your PLE done. And oh, by the way, January 1st is a holiday. So I would back it up a few days. Because if it's not done, you lose your license like that. There is no grace period. And it does not happen at the end of the month. People think, oh, it's the end of that month, because that used to be the old way things were done. So some of the brokerages and staff tend to tell people, oh, at the end of the month that you got initiated. And no, it's not. It is to the day. I would advise you to start 6 months in advance. Because even doing the online stuff, it is boring as heck. Think I'm boring? That's even worse. So, and it is just to do your class. And just start in advance and try to get it done. Give yourself plenty of time to get it done. Okay? Any other questions? Did I answer your question, Dennis? Okay. All right. So that was a great question because those are things that people don't often talk about. All right, so back to this. Oh, let me Let's give our homework assignment. Everyone online, listen up, homework. This is a homework assignment that is throughout the course of the program, okay? You need to visit 5 open houses. Now, whether you're licensed or not, it doesn't matter. You can visit an open house. You don't have to tell anyone that you're an agent or not. What I want you to do is to go visit the open house, bring back the flyer. 2 of them can be Keller Williams. I would prefer that only 1 be from our office. I really want you to look at other brokerages, and I want you to bring their flyer back with you, okay? Because we want to learn the do's and don'ts, okay? What attracted you, and it's for your own edification especially, but what did they do right, what did they do wrong, okay? From the time you park your car, or as you're approaching the neighborhood, look for signage. Was it there? How effective was it? What was their online presence? How effective was it? When you went into the house, how were you greeted? You know, do they ask you if you have an agent or if you're looking? And if they ask you, be honest with them, you know. Or you can play a game if you want. You know, I'm just looking, haven't decided yet, and just see what kind of information they ask and give you and how they treat others coming in as they're talking to you. And just think about how you feel about all that. Walking around the house and all that. Yes, Susan. Yeah. You can tell them your agent. Or you can be like half the population and just put down fake info. Yeah, no. And you can tell them you can tell them you're a new agent. You know, you can certainly tell them that. But, you know, unless they point blankly ask, because, you know, you can just write it down. Yeah, right. But try to do a couple different brokerages just to get a feel for the different things that are going on out there. Okay. And then 3 brokers opens. So if you're not an agent yet, you can still go to brokers open because you're attached to the office. So you can go along with our agents, or so on Tuesday, using Monday, Rachel Sykes sends out an email with all the brokers opens in our area. So it's like the McLean, Falls Church, Arlington. And you can look at those brokers opens and decide which ones you want to go to. But try to go to at least 3 of them during the course of this class and 5 open houses. Right. Between now, no. Clarified, between now and February 12th. Okay. So, and then on February 12th, we will have drawings. Now, I can say, of the classes I've done since leaving the staff and coming back and doing it like this, I have only had one person do all of them. Yes. Others, you know, partial or whatever. I just put the names in a drawing, you know. I think one group we had 3 that were pretty close, but they didn't do all the 5 and the 3. So it's, you know, well, some did, but they didn't do the whole thing, you know, didn't do all of it. So brokers opens. So on Tuesday in real estate, brokers have open houses that are really private toward the brokers themselves, the agents to come around and look. The idea of a brokers open was before it went on the market, and some brokers opens are prior to going on the market, and some now are doing it just as extra exposure. But it's to show the house to brokers, like if Dennis were to go to Muhammad's brokers open and Muhammad's got a new listing and it's not on the market, Dennis as an agent can go there and look at it, and he might have a buyer that he knows. And Muhammad's going to put it on the market on Thursday. So Dennis saw it on Tuesday, it's going to the market on Thursday. Dennis can already have his client queued up to see it, type thing. Okay. Thursdays often are days that agents put new listings on. Just because they're prepping for the weekend or whatever. A lot of people want to get that open house. Open houses are more prevalent inside the Beltway than outside the Beltway. They are outside the Beltway, but the ones you're going to see here in the office that are coming from all brokerages, and then the ones that are from our office, they might be outside the Beltway in some of the other areas. But team up together. Yes. Okay. Do you have access to MLS yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go into MLS, under the matrix side, there's a tab across the top, like fifth over, and it says open houses. Click on that, then put in a geographical area and the date, and it'll show you everything that agents have put online for an open house, okay? And in brokers opens as well. So you might, like me, I might live in, I live in Culpeper, and if I was going to do this assignment, instead of driving in on Tuesday, I might see what's going on in Warrington or Prince William, for example. So I don't have access to those flyers, but I can go online, do a broker's open search for next Tuesday and see what's out there. Okay. All right. So that's your assignment. There's gift cards and cash and other prizes. So yeah, so my goal is to do it on the 12th. Well, and I've got to talk to David to see if that's a good day to do the mock settlement. So if we do, then we'll do the door prize drawings and stuff in the morning, and then do the mock settlement right after that on the 12th. But that is our last day of class for this go round. Okay, so we finished with the first part of paragraph B. So now under brokers shall also earn. The broker's fee shall also be earned, due and payable by buyer under either of the following circumstances. If within blank days, customarily it's 30. Much more than that, some people put 45, some people put 60, but if a buyer is really serious, they've moved on to another brokerage at that point. But where this covers you as an agent, if you're not cognizant of your deadline date, it gives you a little comfort there. Okay, so if you've missed your termination date, you've got 30 days post termination date to still get commission. Okay, so if within 30 days, for example, after expiration or buyer's early termination of this agreement, so if the buyer terminates it, you still have that opportunity to get commission. Buyer enters into a contract to acquire any real property of the type discussed in the purpose paragraph, unless buyer has entered into a subsequent buyer-broker agreement with another real estate broker. Okay. So you don't hear the word procuring cause a whole lot now because of this paragraph. Before, if Adrian had shown a property to Susie, and then Susie fired Adrian, and then Susie went and hired Dennis to show the same property, Adrian was really procuring cause, and Adrian had the right to sue the commission that Dennis was going to get on the property that she had showed. Because you may or may not have had a written agreement back in the day, but you are procuring cause. You're the one who first showed Susie that property. But because of this paragraph, procuring cause almost doesn't exist anymore. Because if Susie fires Adrian, terminates their relationship for whatever reason, and engages in a lawful relationship with Dennis, Dennis shows her the same property or not, but Dennis is the one who writes the contract, then that paragraph says that Dennis gets the commission. Okay. But if Susie terminated the relationship with Adrian, did not hire Dennis, went to the listing agent and said to the listing agent, I'm not represented, would you write the contract for your seller and give me money back or whatever she says, and the listing agent does write that contract, Adrian is still entitled to the commission because Susie does not have an agreement with the listing agent. Okay. And it's within 30 days of her firing you. So maybe Susie was mad at Adrian and says, I'm not going to let her get any commission. And then you hear that, oh, she's written a contract and she's, so you just wait till it goes to settlement. And then your broker calls the listing broker and says, by the way, here's our buyer's agreement. To our knowledge, she has no other agreement and we're entitled to that commission. But you, Adrian, do not fight the battle. That's what Steve's for. Okay? Yeah. And if you wait to 31 days because you know what the paragraph says, then she's out of luck. Right. But if you go get another agent, then she's out of luck as well. So then there's a big or here. See that O-R? It is capitalized and it is bolded. Okay? So it doesn't mean and, it means or. So if having entered into an enforceable contract to acquire real property during the term of this agreement, buyer defaults under the terms of that contract. Okay. So broker's fees shall also be earned, due and payable by buyer under either of the following circumstances. So paragraph 2 says, if having entered into an enforceable contract to acquire real property during the term of this agreement, buyer defaults under the terms of the contract. So it's saying that buyer owes the broker commission if they default, right? If they default under the contract. So they've done something, fraudulent. If they fraudulently get out of a deal or whatever, a broker can force them to pay commission. They can force the commission to be paid. It doesn't happen often, but it is there for that purpose. So if a buyer defaults in some way, so for example, I'm a buyer and I go put a contract on a house. Ed has done all my paperwork and I decide I really don't want that house, but we've already gone past the home inspection. The home inspection's already been cleared and we've agreed to that. I've already received the HOA document, so I have no other out except for financing, okay? So I go out and buy a nice new car. So what do? I mess up my credit in such a way that my ratios will not permit me to get the loan on the house, and I therefore default. Or I quit my job on purpose, and I therefore default. I've done an act on purpose to default on the contract, to get out of the contract. So you're harming the buyer's agent by doing such, right? So which brings me up to a point, and I'm glad you asked that question, Susie. So as a buyer's agent, you have a motherly and fatherly talk with people. Sometimes it's regardless of their age, but you have to say to them, you're going into you've written a legal contract. It is a binding contract. There are consequences to your actions. And your lender has looked at your finances based on what's there today. So please do not open any more credit cards. Please do not go to CarMax and look at cars and give them any financial information, even open up an inquiry about you. Do not do it. And this is why. Especially if you're someone whose ratios are very low on the scale, 10 and 20 points can screw up everything. You can just totally lose out on getting your loan. I had a client 2 years ago, loosely related in the family, and he said to me within 2 weeks of going to closing, hey, I'm thinking about giving my niece my car and going out and buying a car this weekend. I'm like, no. I said, he goes, well, I thought you said something about buying a car. I said, yeah, I told you no. You cannot do it. I said, now the day after you close, go buy all you want. But do not do anything now to change your picture. Another case recently, it was 2 years ago at Thanksgiving, the Friday before the Thanksgiving weekend, the buyer who had lots of money, it was one of the students that was in class here, their client had plenty of money, was putting down like $70,000 in cash from their savings account on this townhouse. And he and his fiance were talking about furniture. And he said, oh, well, I've got money in my money market still. Let me go move that over. So as soon as we settle on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, we can take advantage of Black Friday sales. So what happened was, now my client represented the seller. So what happened was, and this dearly beloved young man was working with a credit union who does not work on weekends, who are 9 to 5, who basically follows government vacations and stuff. So lo and behold, on Tuesday when they were running the stuff before the Wednesday closing, they see this extra money in his account, and all the red flags in the world go off. Now, in any normal Highlands, I talked to my guys over here and I said, if this happened to my buyer, what would the time frame be? They said about an hour and a half to figure it out. Get the letter from the money market account showing that it was his money anyway, and we would have cleared it under conditions and gone forward. But because it was his credit union, it was a 10-day delay because you had the Thanksgiving day, the weekend in there, 10-day delay. And the seller wanted to sell. There was, and the seller, it was just kind of bound there. And agreed to the, extension because they didn't want to put it back on the market. But a simple little mistake like that, and it can happen. So you don't do anything to mess up your credit. Don't do anything to change your credit. If your dad's going to give you $10,000, tell him to hold off to it till it settles and then give you the money. Whether it's an actual gift for tax deductions or just they want to give it to you regardless of taxes. It doesn't matter. It affects what's in your bank account because your lenders are going to ask for your last 2 bank statements. And so whatever they see in there, and if you have a savings account of $70,000, that's what they started with. And then they see you have normal paychecks of X amount of dollars coming in, money going out. But all of a sudden, there's this huge amount of money that just shows up. We had another client who had loaned, so he had gone and had everything approved. And unbeknownst to me, he had let friends borrow the money. And then he was getting the money back and was going to put it into his account. And we had to stop. I said, I will not write a contract this weekend for you. And it's one of those things, what made me ask that question? Is all your money still there because you have to write me an earnest money check that is negotiable on Tuesday? Well, I'm like, what? Well, what? No. Okay, we have to stop everything. You now have to get that borrowed money back. It's got to cure for at least 60, 70 days in your bank before we can start over again. And you need to get a new pre-approval letter. Because he had messed up. He didn't, So it's a constant reminder. So just remember that with your buyers. Constantly remind them about their finances. And some people think, well, I have lots of money. It shouldn't matter. Like that kid that was putting down $70,000, but it does matter. Where did that money come from? Okay. All right. So relocation. I'm going to talk about it here. We're not going to talk about it when we get to the listing agreement because it's the same situation. Does anyone know what relocation is? Okay, so you've heard the word. So relocation, for those who may not know, is ExxonMobil is a good example. ExxonMobil had a ton of people here that lived in McLean that worked over near where Fairfax Hospital was. Big ExxonMobil. Okay. Several years back, ExxonMobil says we're moving everybody back to Texas. Okay. We're closing down the office here and everyone's moving back to Texas. And they are the bigger wigs in the company. So ExxonMobil paid a relocation company to pick up their people and manage the move from Northern Virginia back to Texas. So in some relocations, there's a guarantee that if your house doesn't sell here, we're going to buy it from you and you'll have your money, equity, to purchase in Texas. Okay. For that, we're going to charge a fee. ExxonMobil has the benefit, but the fee charge comes when it comes to the commissions. So in this particular case, Cardis charges about 45% of the commission. But Cardis isn't the agent, it's the relocation company. And there's many relocation companies out there. So what Cardis would do would say, okay, we're going to engage agents in McLean to list these homes, but we're going to take 45% of that commission, leaving the agent with the 55%, and then splitting that we're going to take 45% as Cartus because we're managing this move and we're guaranteeing equity. Okay, so that's the biggest scope of what a relocation does. Then you start scaling that down based on companies and size and positions in the companies. So another form of relocation could be someone who has like USAA. USAA may say, we will give you $1,600 towards your move if you use one of our real estate agents. Okay. So you as independent contractors can tell your client, I have a relocation program as well. I offer $1,650. If you use me, I will refund you $1,650, always based on lender approval. Lender has to approve every credit that comes into someone's account. As long as it's toward closing costs, then the lender does approve it, generally speaking. So you can have your own relocation program. So by doing that, not only do you get the deal, you're not sharing that relocation. So someone might come to Mohammed, for example, and say, Mohammed, my company's moving me and I need to sell my house. So Mohammed would say, well, do you have a relocation? I really don't know. And so Mohammed would say, well, call Human Resources. Don't be so specific with them, or go online. Most of them are online, and look what your benefit is. What is your benefit? Is your benefit $2,000 to move your household goods? Is your benefit $1,000 to move your household goods? Then you as an agent can make that decision. Because if the price point of that listing is such that if you gave away 35% or 45% to the reload company, is that more than the $2,000? See what I'm saying? So you might say to Mohammed might say to his client, well, don't use your benefit package because I can actually match and do a better job for you. Okay. And that way he's not going through reload, because the moment you engage with the relocation company, which is that client's benefit, then the relocation company will call you and they could charge you anywhere from 25 to 45%. And you have to decide as a business decision, do you want to do it or not? Muhammad's a best friend of this guy, but he's looking at it financially. I'm going to lose that much money because he's gone through reload. Okay. So those are kind of hard. Yes, Dennis?
How can a relocation company charge part of the commission if they're don't they have to be like part of the commission?
Well, they are, because they are a relocation. They are licensed in the real estate as a relocation company. Like Weicker Relocation Company is one of the largest relocation. It's a big umbrella company. And so that's why they can get commission, because they are actively engaging in working with agents. Now, some of them have agents on their own. And I can also tell you that working with, on this listing side with relocation companies, you have to fill out a secondary set of paperwork almost entirely masking what you're doing online for Keystone to enter it into the multiple listing system. You often have to go and do the same exact stuff into their system. So you're actually doing double the work. So if you can avoid someone doing reload, then do it. But you need that client to find out what their benefit is. Okay? I had a friend out in California who was leaving, he was Navy SEAL, was moving 2 miles away, and they said, you can do it yourself and we'll just give you the money, or you can hire a moving company. What my friend failed to hear was that every vehicle that helps you move, you have to bring it here empty and then bring it back full, and we're going to pay you based on the weight. So what they said was if he wanted to move on his own and not hire a moving company, so a bunch of your buddies wanted to bring their cars and trucks and load him out and move him from one neighborhood to the other, 2 miles away. They had to bring their cars to the base empty and be weighed, bring their cars back to the base full and be weighed, and then they were given X amount of dollars per weight. Now, my friend unfortunately didn't hear that. So after we all moved him, we all said, tough luck, Charlie. We are not reloading this stuff and doing it again. But that was his benefit. His benefit and getting out of the military was to have X amount of dollars to move you off of base housing by a company or have your friends do it, but you can get money from it, but you had to be weighed. So there's always, you need to make sure everyone understands what it is. And around here, it's not unheard of that you're going to run into people that are mustering out of the military, so to speak, and who may or may not might leave McLean but move to Loudoun or Warrington or Culpeper. So they're still somewhat local. You could still be involved in both sides of the deal, and they may not want to use their relo. Okay. So it's just always best to ask the question, and if your client goes, well, I don't even know what that is, say, then you don't have it. And the answer is no. But as much as you can avoid getting involved in relo, you can save your client money, and you can certainly save yourself commission. Okay. All right. So types of real estate representation, disclosure, and informed consent. Seller representation occurs when the sellers contract to use the services of their own broker, known as a listing agent, to act on their behalf. Buyer representation occurs by virtue of this agreement. Note, broker may assist a seller or prospective seller by performing ministerial acts that are not inconsistent with broker's duties as buyer's agent under this agreement. So here we come to the big distinction between designation and dual. Designated representation occurs when a buyer and a seller in one transaction are represented by different sales associates affiliated with the same broker. Each of these sales associates, known as a designated representative, represents fully the interest of a different client in the same transaction. Designated representatives are not dual representatives of each representative, only the buyer or only the seller in a specific real estate transaction. In the event of the designated representation, each representative shall be bound by the client. I'm sorry, guys. I need to scroll. Bound by the client, confidentiality requirements set forth in the broker duties paragraph. The broker remains a dual representative. Okay, so now, buyer does or does not consent to designated representation. Now, this is your buyer's choice, but the answer should always be yes. They consent. Because if Keller Williams Realty Falls Church has a listing and your client says they do not consent to designated representation, that means they cannot be shown any Keller Williams Realty Falls Church listing. So Muhammad represents a buyer and Dennis represents a seller. You both are agents under Keller Williams Realty Falls Church. But Steve has designated Robert to represent the seller. He has designated Muhammad to represent the buyer. So you're representing two different people, but you're under the same brokerage. Steve actually represents both parties, right? But you are dealing on the ground, if you will, with the lister. You're dealing on the ground with the buyer. You guys are not communicating behind closed doors as to what's really going on and sharing any confidential information, because that's not what we do. So so his buyer writes a contract on so that's designated representation. Okay. So if your client, when your client gets to this paragraph, you need to make sure they understand that it has nothing to do with dual representation. The broker, in a sense, is dual representing both sides, but on the ground, the agents are not. They're not behind closed doors sharing information. There's no way that Muhammad could read your documents in .loop unless you gave him your sign-on, right? There's no way that Muhammad knows anything that you and your client have discussed unless you're standing in the kitchen talking out loud about it. That client, Be very careful about those conversations, because you never know who's listening, and you never know down the road that someone might want to write a contract on that. Okay. So now going to the other side, we're talking about dual representation. So dual representation occurs when the same broker and the same sales associate represent both the buyer and the seller, okay, in one transaction. In the event of dual representation, brokers shall be bound by confidentiality requirements for each client set forth in the broker duties paragraph. Okay. as new agents, I would implore you not to be dual agents. You don't know enough to know that you don't know enough. Okay. Some people can be very successful with this and some cannot. It's very difficult to begin with because you're trying to be ethical and honest to both sides. Okay. So here's an example. Dennis represents the seller. Okay. And the seller says to Dennis, okay, I want 500 for the house. I think we can get 500. And Dennis says, yeah, you're probably closer to 490, but maybe let's see, let's really look at it. And he's analyzed it. Dennis concurs that we're going to put on the market for 500. The seller says to Dennis, now, I really want a quick sell. I need to move on. The office is moving me, and I really want to be out of here in 45 days. So I'm willing to accept anything up to down to 475. Okay. Confidential conversation there. Robert calls up Dennis and says, hey, I just saw that you have a house listed at 500. My wife and I love that neighborhood. We really want to be in it. And I would really like to write a contract on that house. And Dennis says, well, I do have dual representation. Are you willing to accept that? And Robert says, fine. And Robert goes to Ed and gets his lender letter, and Ed says he can spend 480. So Robert says to Dennis, well, do you think your seller will take 480? Or should I offer 475, give myself negotiation room? And Dennis is sitting there going, oh my goodness. I can get, right. So Dennis says, I can't share anything with you. I can't even intimate one way or the other, Robert. You tell me what you want me to put on this line right now. And Robert goes, I want you to put 475, 75. Now, Dennis didn't in any way, shape, or form share with Robert. Right? Robert chose 475 because his lender told him his max to spend was 480. He wanted a negotiation room, so he arbitrarily said 475. So Dennis writes a contract for 475. Everyone signed the acknowledgement of dual agency. So Dennis goes and presents that contract to his seller. What do you think that seller is going to think of right away? And there's nothing you can do to say that you didn't. Nothing. So that's why, even though Dennis was totally ethical and did everything he could do, it just came out, it just happenstance, coincidentally came out to be the same figure. Okay. Dennis wants to see his friend Robert get the house. But then his other friend's going to always feel that Dennis cheated him out of $25,000, knowing that he was desperate to move. And you can't say one way or the other because no one was there, right? So that's where, that's a situation where it's like you've done nothing wrong, but all this perceived that you've done wrong. And that's why dual agency is so hard. In some states, it's not. So at the end of the day, just like the early example, if Robert was my friend and came to me and said, hey, Dennis, I saw your listing. I want to write on it. You say, Robert, that's great. I want to work with you, but I want to keep clean hands, and I want you to be taken care of. And I don't want anyone to misconstrue anything that's happened. So I'm going to have a good friend of mine talk to you. You're going to write an agreement with them. They're going to make the contract offer. And they're just going to pay me a referral fee. They're going to be your agent. I want to get your future business. And you've talked to Susie and said, look, Susie, I want you to represent Robert for me. Pay me a referral fee. Robert and I have been friends for a long time. I'd like 35% referral. Do you agree to that, Susie? Yes. Because, he came to me. Or it's 25%. But long as you two agree and you have it in writing that that's what you're accepting, then Susie's going to work with Robert. But you say to Susie, Susie, Robert's been a lifelong friend. I want to still have Robert on my database. I want to cultivate that relationship. I want my referrals to come. I would like Robert to give me his referrals. Do you understand that, Susie? Right. So you're going to put Robert on your database. Susie's not going to do that. Okay. But remember, neither one of you own Robert. So Robert might run into a single female who's looking to buy a house and say, Susie was really good. I think she'd work well with her, where Dennis may not. And he may refer Susie, that person, to Susie. You cannot get upset with Robert nor Susie because we don't own anyone. Okay. That's where the referrals and the databases can become touchy subjects. I've got a lot of agents in this office probably have the same people in their database and they may or may not even know it, especially if you're from the same group or something. It happens. So I always just say nobody owns anybody. Okay? All right. So any questions about dual or designated? Okay, just make it clear. So like I said, just don't do dual. And then when we get to the listing side, we'll talk about variable rate if you decide that you really want to do it. But I would always get some advice from a more experienced person. Yes. Now you can do it ahead of time for them. You know, if you want to go through, or you can ask them. I always fill out does consent to designated, does not consent to dual, and I explain it. Now I'm on a team, okay? So on my team, it might be a situation where you may eventually find yourself. Are we okay? Does anyone have a question? Let me make sure that I have the mic on. It sounds like we do though, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. So on a team, my business partner also has a full-time job. So I'm probably the first person that interacts with the client. And so with a listing, I interact with the client first, and then I say to the client, I am part of a team. If you will accept dual representation, even though we're different people, if we do dual agency here, I look at it as dual agency because we're part of a team, and that's certainly how Marilyn looks at it. Daphne does not see our listing agreement at all because we have two separate portals. So if we find a buyer, if Daphne represents the buyer, would you accept that? And if they agree, then we go forward that way. Because sometimes for a lister, if Daphne and I both represent, if I represent the seller and Daphne represented the buyer, and the seller only wants to pay 4% commission at that point, it's called a variable rate, and we'll get in more detail with that. That's more advantageous for the seller. But Daphne and I don't look at each other's paperwork. We have two separate accounts, and we don't look at each other's account. And we've just done that for this purpose. But if they say, no, I don't want to do dual agency, so the moment I sign an agreement with the client, fill out the paperwork, send it to Steve for his signature, then I share that with Daphne, so she's fully cognizant of the agreement should she get a phone call. Okay. So most phone calls come to me because I have the time to pick them up, but we also have a DID number that I can direct to Daphne's cell phone should I be out of town. So we have to think about if we're doing a role as a dual agency. And we've only done it once, and it was on a rental because I personally don't like to do them for the reason I just shared. I don't want any incident of someone thinking that we've shared proprietary information. Okay? So you've all heard fair housing. Property shall be shown and made available without regard to race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin, as well as classes protected by laws of the United States, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and applicable local jurisdictions, or by the Realtors Code of Ethics. So one of the things that's just recently happened with the Realtors Code of Ethics is it's not listed here specifically, but the gender situation. So you can't discriminate. So if your client says, look, I don't want Hispanics buying my house. I don't want blacks buying my house. You have to walk away. You say, we cannot do that. We can't. They're not going to see the name. They're not going to see the person potentially before, and they may not even see him at settlement. But if you have someone who's given you specifics up front about wanting to discriminate, you need to walk away. You do not play the game. You do not, if your client says, well, what kind of name do you think that is? What's Minkowitz? What kind of name is that? What kind of name is, you don't know. You don't know. And you do not give any inclination one way or the other. Same as when you're showing a house around. I was with a client one time and she says, is this a dark neighborhood? I said, I don't know. It looks like there's some street lamps around here. And she kept persisting. And I just pretend like I had no idea what she was talking about. It was on a rental situation. But I just pretended I did not know what she was talking about. And, it happens. It's out there. Sometimes it's more subtle than others. You just, But when you're representing a buyer, that's one thing. But when you're representing a seller, in the buyer situation, you can't say this neighborhood is like this or this neighborhood's like that. That's up to them to search. And they can say, I don't want to see such and such neighborhood, and that's their choice. But you cannot say to someone, this neighborhood's like this or this neighborhood's like that. There's enough public information out there that they can look it up and see. But when you represent the seller, they cannot choose who they want to buy their house based on these categories. Now, in the state of Virginia, when it comes to rentals, they can discriminate against students, where in DC they cannot. So in Virginia, people that live near George Mason, when their houses come up on rentals, you'll often see no students, no students, no students. But in DC, they can't discriminate against students. But in Virginia, we still can discriminate against students. Animal House Revisited, right? So, okay, attorney's fees. If any party breaches this agreement and a non-breaching party retains legal counsel to enforce its rights hereunder, the non-breaching party shall be entitled to recover against the breaching party, in addition to any other damages recoverable against any breaching party, all of the reasonable legal expenses incurred in enforcing its rights under this agreement. Whether or not suit is filed, and in obtaining, enforcing, and or defending any judgment related thereto. Should any tribunal of a competent jurisdiction determine that more than one party to the dispute has breached this agreement, then all such breaching parties shall bear their own cost, unless the tribunal determines that one or more of the parties is substantially a prevailing party, in which case any substantially prevailing party shall be entitled to recover from any of the breaching parties, in addition to any other damages recoverable against any breaching party, all of its reasonable legal expenses incurred in enforcing its rights under this agreement, whether or not suit is filed, and in obtaining, enforcing, and or defending any judgment related thereto. Party, as used in this paragraph, includes any third party beneficiary identified herein. Legal expenses, as used in the paragraph, includes attorney fees, court costs, and litigation expenses, if any, including but not limited to expert witness fees and court reporter fees. So basically, if someone files suit, loser pays all, in the most layman's terms. So it may not go to court. It could go to mediation. It could be agreed upon. Okay, so that's just a caveat to cover us if there's some suit against us. Now, a lot of times a broker will just settle. Sometimes it's not fair. They settle it just to get it over with, to get it moving, to get out of the deal. And sometimes that happens. Some brokers will do that. And then sometimes they go to the mat and fight. It just depends on what the outcome is. Okay. The buyer does or does not hold an active or inactive real estate license, any state. So if you were an agent, if your buyer was an agent in Florida 10 years ago, then the answer is it does hold an inactive license. Presumably for the public, so Robert in our case is not an agent, okay? So if Robert were to go buy a house, he's not an agent. Have you ever been an agent before, Robert? Okay, so he doesn't have any inside knowledge about how real estate works in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, Debbie, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Alex Holden. I have a question,
Uh-huh.
and it was on the back paragraph. You were just talking about steering and racial or whatnot.
Yes.
Now, if somebody owns in Virginia, if somebody owns a condo or a little condo block of 4 homes, can't they rent it to who they want?
Well,
I mean, they can say yes and no.
they can always say yes or no.
They're 4.
Yes, but
Okay.
if you know that they're going to discriminate against a certain group, then you are being unethical and listing that property.
Correct. So what exactly are they talking about then? I mean, if they can rent to who they want, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that in itself, is really steering. You know what I mean? That ties their hands unless they completely come out and say, if it's somebody certain that they're against. You know what I mean?
Right. So if you're
unless they say it to us, right?
right, unless they say it to
We
you,
don't know
you
anything.
knowledge. Right. So let's say you have someone who owns several condos, like you said, and they've engaged you, but they've not shared with you that they don't want a certain type for whatever, for rental or what have you.
Mhm.
And all things equal, and they're presented with 2 applications,
Correct.
and they choose one application, they don't have to give you the reason why.
Right.
But if they
Okay.
choose one,
Sometimes I
because of
have
race,
noticed it. Yeah. Okay.
right? But if you knowingly
Yeah.
know they're doing it because of race, then you are being unethical representing them. You yourself are
Okay.
violating the law.
Okay.
And you
All right.
yourself should not represent them.
Okay. Don't ask any questions.
Right.
All
Like,
right, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, so if a homeowner represents themselves, yes, they can be discriminatory all they want to be. But this agreement is between a seller or a landlord and a brokerage. And they cannot be discriminatory.
Right. And what about an agent that has their own property, and they're discriminatory?
An
It's
agent
their
cannot
own property.
discriminate, even at their own property,
Correct. Okay.
because you're bound under the code of
All
ethics.
right. And you still have to record that you are an agent renting
Yes.
your own property.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're almost through, guys. I still have my voice. Okay, so disclaimers. Professional services. Oh, scroll down. It's going to be my hardest thing. Feel free to yell out anytime to scroll. Okay. Buyer acknowledges that broker is being retained solely as a real estate agent and not as an attorney, tax advisor, lender, appraiser, surveyor, structural engineer, mold or air quality expert, home inspector, or other professional service providers. Buyer is advised to seek professional advice concerning condition of property or concerning legal and tax matters. Okay, it is not unheard of that you as a real estate agent may also be a home inspector. You as a real estate agent may also be a lender. But just like dual agency, woe to you for mixing the two. Give it to somebody else. Get a referral fee. You might be an accountant, but don't represent them as an accountant if you're representing them as an agent here. Don't give it tax advice, because you're getting money. Your commission is a payment. So you have a fiduciary part in what's being played out here, okay? So again, if you might have some of these things, or even like me sharing with you about the thing that we were told, about the 18-month thing with when you're doing your deductions. I'm kind of skirting there because I was told that by an accountant who was training and teaching our class. And I looked it up, and yes, the IRS allows that. So I felt comfortable sharing that. But I would not give you tax advice other than keep track of your receipts. But everyone's different. So, and even if I were an accountant or had full knowledge of what you could deduct, I'm not going to tell you that. Just keep track of your receipts. Keep track of your time, keep track of your mileage. Because we don't want to skirt the law and put ourselves out there. Because we could say something. Let's say Dennis has a past experience as a contractor building homes, and his good friend is a structural engineer, and he's taught him some tricks of the trade on how to look at a house and how to know by the apex if something's wrong and all this stuff. And so he's got this little bit of knowledge, and he sees this house with his buyer and says, oh yeah, we might need to call an structural engineer here if we really want this house. Because what I think I see. Well, what about if there was nothing and they spent $600 to hire a structural engineer because Dennis thought he saw what he saw? So just don't get yourself in that mess. Okay? Keep your real estate hat on and only your real estate hat. Okay. Megan's Law. Now this is in here, so you do not need to use the document called Megan's Law. Okay? Other brokerages still pull it out and submit it with part of the deal. You don't have to, okay, because it's here. Megan's Law, buyers should exercise whatever due diligence buyer deems necessary with respect to information on any sexual offenders registered under Chapter 9 of Title 9.1 of the Code of Virginia. Such information may be obtained by contacting the local police department or the Department of State Police, Central Criminal Records Exchange, and there's the hyperlink. That's it. You tell them this is here. You don't talk about it. You do not tell your client that there's a sexual offender living next door. It's not a material fact to the house. Okay? It's up to them to find out. And if they're concerned about where the sexual offenders are, they need to look it up themselves. It's not up to you to advise. Okay? All right. Wire fraud. Buyers should never transmit non-public personal information such as credit or debit, bank, accounting, or routing numbers by email or other unsecured electronic communication. There are numerous email phishing scams and involve fraudulent requests to wire funds in conjunction with real estate transactions. If buyer receives any electronic communication directing the transfer to funds to provide non-public personal information, even that electronic communication appears to be from a representative of the broker, do not respond. Such representation, even they may otherwise appear to be from the broker, could be met as part of a scheme to defraud buyer by misdirecting the funds of buyer to use identity to commit a crime. Okay? All right, so what happens when the title company sends you a buyer's information sheet and says, I need your buyer's social security number? So David sends me a sheet and says, I need your seller's social security number, their bank payoff information, and whatever. So there's options. Your client, if your client feels that they're comfortable with giving that to you over the phone, you write it down and transmit it over the phone to David's staff, or if they're comfortable with you emailing it. There are times that that information is required, but what this paragraph is cautioning them, someone should not be telling them they need to wire funds. Now, if your client says, I don't have checks and I need to wire my EMD, that's a different case. Then you get the wiring instructions to the title company or to the office, and your client's going to wire their earnest money deposit into there. Okay, so wiring will take place, but this is cautioning them against fraudulent wiring. Someone who's sending out, we all have on our computers spyware that's looking for words. How many times have you been on Amazon? And then you go on your Facebook and it says so-and-so likes this on Amazon. You're like, really? How they know I was looking at that on Amazon? It's there. So you got to be careful. So when someone starts looking for a house, even as realtors, my personal Hotmail account is not out there in the real estate world. But I have tons of realtors sending me information constantly to my personal account. It all goes into junk because I have it set up. If I don't know you, it goes into junk. But I scan it through at minimum of 3 times a day. And I am amazed at how much junk is in there because they've connected my name to real estate. And somewhere along the line is found in public records or whatever my personal Hotmail account. And I'm, whether it's to transfer brokerages or to come to their open house or to come to an event in their office. I've never used my personal email account ever in anything to do with real estate. But it comes up all the time. So those little phishing scams and all that type of stuff. And there's been times in my personal email account that I'll have a client who has a house and all of a sudden an email will come in. It looks like the similar address, but it's not. So be aware of things like that, even for yourself. And as your clients are starting to look for properties and stuff, tell them to be very wary of what they click on when it comes to real estate. It should be coming from your feed from MLS and not from anybody else, right? Zillow and Trulia should not be pushing stuff to them. But what that is that's agents or criminals who've masked Zillow and Trulia and pushing emails out to people. So be careful, stuff like that. So just, make sure they understand that they should be communicating with you. And if they have any question about anything, especially when it comes to money or transferring anything, that they talk to you. And then some clients will want to go into the office to give their personal information to the title company, and that's perfectly acceptable. If that's what they need to do to feel secure, then that's what they need to do. Okay? Same with service provider referrals, just like with the other thing up top with professional services. Broker or one of broker's sales associates may refer to service providers to assist the buyer in transactions. This referral is not an endorsement, a guarantee, or warranty as to the quality, cost, and/or timeliness of the services to be provided. Buyer is advised to independently investigate all options for the service providers and consider whether any service provider will work effectively with the buyer. Buyer is free to reject any refer service provider for any other reason. Now, we all start meeting people, and you may have a buyer who's never worked with a carpet company and who says, when I buy this house, I want to replace the carpet. Anyone you suggest? And if you have personal working knowledge of someone, like I can say, I've worked with Louis Ballou Floors for years. Here's Louis's information. I've not worked with anyone else for the last few years, but here are a couple of other ones in the area that I know agents in our office have used, Carpet One or whatever. You could do that. There's no law requirement that says you have to give them 3, even for a lender. It is kind of a CYA thing to make sure you give them more than one person. So you're not appearing to be steering them to somebody. But you're not getting a kickback from anybody either because it's illegal that you do, right? So I can refer to someone to Louis Ballou or Carpet One or whomever else just because I may have personal knowledge of their work ethic or their abilities or whatever. And that person can certainly thank me, but they cannot give me money for every referral I give them. Okay. Now they can send me a Starbucks card, and most of them know that that's a good thing to do. But it's not a tit for tat thing. So, and then the miscellaneous, this agreement, any exhibits and any other addenda signed by the parties can constitute the entire agreement between the parties and supersedes any other written or oral agreements between the parties. This agreement can only be modified in writing when signed by both parties. The laws of Virginia shall govern the validity, interpretation, and enforcement of this agreement. Okay, so any other provisions, okay? So if there's any provision that your client wants to make clear of, then you write it down here. So let's say your client wants to look in Loudoun, Fairfax, Arlington and Falls Church, okay? So you might, to cover yourself, you might say, after 10 showings, $100 transportation fee will be charged. And that's perfectly acceptable. That's where you don't want to be in a taxi cab for someone who just wants to go and look. And that's where you're going to learn through some scripts that Eric and others teach you and really defining what their needs are. And sometimes there's someone who's moving into this area and they really don't know the area. But you need to define down, okay, let's spend today in Loudoun and looking. Let's spend another day in Arlington. You don't want to be going from Arlington to Loudoun to, in the same day. So those are conversations, but to protect yourself, you should be showing someone 30 and 40 homes. You should not need that because now, especially with the virtual tours, you can start culling down really what they want for specifics. So this is the buyer's agreement, but that's not all we have. So, yes,
I have a question.
sure,
So I'm only licensed in Virginia.
right,
Does this agreement only cover in Virginia?
yes,
So if you had somebody who was living in Virginia and DC, in addition to being licensed in DC, you would have to do a separate buyer agreement for you to
yes, yes. Same with Maryland. If you're a Virginia agent and your client says you've met them and all of a sudden they say, hey, Dennis, I want to see, I might consider living in Montgomery County as well as Fairfax. You're like, well, Mohammed, I don't work in Maryland, but I know a friend, Debbie Ruef, she works in Maryland. Debbie would have to do a separate agreement with you, and she'll give me a referral fee for that. So you don't need to worry about that. I'm covered. I can't. Now, you don't know Debbie, Mohammed, but you know me. And well, Mohammed says, well, Dennis, I don't know Debbie, and I really want you to go along with me. Well, you can ride along with us, Dennis, but you better not open your mouth. Mohammed cannot look at you and say, Dennis, what do you think about this house? You cannot talk. Once you cross the river, you are mute. You can't talk about anything real estate related. You cannot comment about the neighborhood. And even after we come back across the river, you cannot. You can't even do your own comps and give them to Muhammad because you're not licensed to do that. Okay. Now you could say to me, what do you think? And, and you and I can talk as professionals, but you cannot give any advice. Okay. And you really, Muhammad just has to hire someone else. And it's better for you that you can refer to someone that you know instead of him going out and finding a Maryland broker in Maryland, because we have enough in our office. And you just take that referral. So it might be a day he says, well, let's look at Maryland and Fairfax. If you're going to tag along and if we're going to be in one car and we're all three going to go around, then when we hit Virginia, even though I'm a Virginia agent, I don't represent him in Virginia. So therefore I'm mute because I don't represent him, even though I can talk all day long about Virginia. But I don't represent him, so I have no right to talk. Okay. So if you move forward in your book to pages 14, 15, and 16, now we're missing a document, and you guys I'll have to get it for you guys. So this one's called Useful Information, and then there's another one in your dot loop called Understanding. The state of Virginia does not require these as documents and to be part and parcel to the buyer's agreement, but our brokerage does. MVAR strongly encourages that you use them. So your homework this weekend is to read the useful information and the understanding. It just gives you more definition as to what's talked about in the buyer broker's agreement, okay? Robert, you should be able to go out online and find this. You should be able to find those documents online. And then the last page, page 18, this is a brokered requirement. You have to have the affiliated business disclosure. So we have useful, we want to have understanding. I call it the 2 U's. And then the affiliated business disclosure. This disclosure is letting the world know that this office has a fiduciary relationship with Universal Title Falls Church, Highlands Mortgage, S&G Property Management, and HMS Warranty. Now, that fiduciary relationship does not mean a one-to-one commission or a tit-for-tat money exchange. Universal Title, they pay so much money a month to the market center, and they give education. Same with Highlands. There's education involved. They have to give so many educational classes a month, as does Universal. They also pay a fee to be affiliated with and close-knit with us. Now, it does not mean that you have to, as an agent, refer them. You never have to refer them. There is no obligation, and no broker can require you to do that. Now, I have been at a broker before that strong-armed us a lot to use their people, but they cannot make you use their people. We don't make anyone use, and David can attest, if David wasn't doing a good job, I would not use David. He knows that. He's known me enough years to know that. And same with Highlands. If you don't do a good job for me and I'm having to hunt you down, I don't care if you're affiliated with the office. I don't care if the office benefits. You're not going to get my business. You're not going to get my referrals. I know other title companies, and I've worked with many title companies over the years. And because of being on staff, because of just being in the industry since 2001, I understand and have knowledge of what's good and what's not so good. So you start running into problems, and you realize that that group's not doing their job. Title companies, when the market's good, will all of a sudden pop up. And then when the market dies down, they'll start passing out, fading away, because they're in it just for the money and the, to get that business quickly and stuff. They're not in longevity. We've known David Robertson for a long time. David does a good job, and he's an attorney. The other thing you have to be careful about is not every settlement person at a title company is an attorney. A lot of them are settlement agents. So if you want an attorney, if your client might have an affiliation with another title company and want to use them, that's your client's choice in the state of Virginia. I would just make sure that, the attorney has reviewed the documents, and if your client wants to ask a legal question at the table, that the attorney is going to be present. You can have a settlement agent doing the settlement, but is the attorney in the facility to ask a legal question of. Okay. So I would, if you haven't met David or Kristen, I think her name is, she's newer, but she has done 2 settlements for me. Take some time to go over there and visit with them. And then one of the things that we'll talk about next week is you're going to have some homework assignments when we get to the contract portion, where you're going to have to interface with the lenders. Choose 1 or 2 of the lenders that you're going to go and talk to and someone interview and pretend like you're getting your client's information, okay? And, you can do it with a lender that's not in our office if you know a lender. That's fine. But your knowledge to understanding what's out there, okay? And then HMS Warranty, Ron will be here, I think, February 1st. He's going to come and talk to you about the warranty program. Like I said, next Thursday, we've got Donna Frio and Associates come and talk about home inspections. So for this weekend, for Monday morning, if you could just read through the useful information, just familiarize yourself with the terms. And then if you want to look forward to the listing agreement, please do that. Please do so. Okay. When you go to page 21, you're going to see a listing agreement that I took an actual listing and changed the names to protect the innocent and the address and stuff. But this is what we'll start using to build our listing agreement with. So if has anyone not seen an MLS listing yet? Okay. Yeah. So, as you're starting to put your listing agreement together, so someone calls you up and says, "Hey, Adrian, pun intended. I just, all of a sudden it hit me. I want you to come and list my house on Saturday, and here is Friday afternoon, and you're like, oh my gosh. Okay, the first thing you do is you bring up MLS, you look at the tax record, and you see when the house was last listed, and you try to glean what information you can about the house. So you have some working knowledge. If you can, you want to drive by the house and look at the neighborhood. So these are things, if this was an actual address, that's what you would do. Okay, so we're going to start listings on Monday. Okay, the first 15 minutes of the class, we'll have like any questions and answers that you come up with. Feel free to email me, debruef.kw@gmail.com, debruef.kw@gmail.com, 703-303-5476. So text or email any questions you might have. Now, if it's dot loop related, no, I'm not that person. That's David, okay? So no dot loop questions. Try to do some open houses.
So what's the difference? I'm not clear about that. As in open house and broker.
Okay, open house is a public open. Okay, so anyone can come and see the house. You don't have to have an agent with you. A broker's open. So a broker's open is specifically an open house that's geared for real estate agents only to come and view. So it's one broker sharing with other brokers a listing they have coming on the market. Traditionally speaking, that's what it was. It was an open house prior to being open to the public. But sometimes there are brokers opens that may follow the Tuesday following the open house on Sunday. If someone says, I want it on the market on Friday, I want a Saturday and Sunday open house, and I want a broker's open. As a listing agent, you're going to do what your client wants. It's been open to the market. So the broker's open post-public, but it's just more exposure. And sometimes if you have a good enough lunch or a good enough price point, you might get agents that otherwise wouldn't come and look at the house to come through. And that's what brokers opens do. It used to be a joke at our old brokerage. They would sit there with them and splay it out. And, okay, who's got the best lunch? Who's got dessert? Oh, this one, the first 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 person gets a Starbucks card. So if 5 of you in the car, you line up and go in the door, right? And then you share the booty. So some of them will do a grab bag of money. So sometimes it's not even the house that anyone really wants to look at or has a client for, and in other times within your own brokerage, it's supporting your brokerage so that as a listing agent, you can say to your seller, we had 25 agents through today. So it's for that seller, it's confidence that people came to look at their house, thinking that's 25 potential buyers that might be exposed. And it may or may not be. It depends. In hot markets, you could potentially have especially if the broker's open is post open house, you might have a very low broker's open viewing, but you had 50 or 60 people through the open house on Sunday. So sometimes it's all about what food's being offered at the broker's open.
We have to go to broker open house. I have to go to online.
So Rachel on Monday will send you out flyers that we receive here at the office that the agents themselves through their brokerage has submitted a flyer to this organization. One's called Local Coverage. I forgot the other one's name. Frequent Flyer. And it'll be a flyer detailing out about their brokers open. So when they come into the office, Rachel scans them in and she sends them out to the agents on Monday. So that's one resource. The other resource is if you go to MLS under the Brokers Open tab, those might just be for the McLean, Arlington Falls Church area. And you could live in Centerville and Chantilly, so you could go online and look for some out there. Yes. You, right. Do you have MLS Act? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Same. Just go and visit the house. Right. Yeah. It's for you to get an education on what others are doing. Right. 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 Well, if you don't have access, go to an agent and ask someone to help you with that, But it's really just for you to understand what others are doing and really to scrutinize and critique. Is this a good business practice? Did that agent, so let's say Dennis walked into an open house and said, I'm not represented, and you didn't tell them you're an agent, you should tell them, but if you were, if you're really, wanting to get a view, and they spent all their attention talking to you and ignored everyone else that came in with an agent, that's not a good practice either, right? So it's just little nuances like that to really see what's going on to say, okay, that's not a good business practice, or that bothered me. There was no instructions on where to park, like in a condo. There's no instructions on where to park. Oh, I've got to ring a buzzer to get in. How long is it going to take me to get in the door? So if you have a condo that you need to do an open house for, and someone needs to be buzzed in from downstairs, so the thought process might be, I need to have a buddy working with me to let people into the open house, right? Right. So those type of things, what are the obstacles you come across? If the open house started at 12 and you're there at 12 and no one's there, so that type of thing. Just, try to get their flyer, try to write down good and bad. What was a good practice they did? What was the thing that wasn't so great? Uh-huh. You can, but that's one. I want you to try to do 5 different open houses. Preferably, it would be great if you could do 5 different companies. Do one from our office and then others. Because remember, other Keller Williams offices they're not our office. So you can do another Keller Williams, but I would also try to do a Remax, a Century 21, or Long and Foster, or Weichert, or some of those. Weichert's still going to want them to have their balloons up. It's against the state law, but that's okay. All right, we're signing off, everybody. See you Monday morning.
Thank you.